I thought it was just another babysitting job. 2 kids, a quiet house, nothing unusual. But then I heard it. A whisper from the hallway, a child's voice saying things no child should ever know. And when I turned around, one of the kids was gone. That's when I realized I was not supposed to survive this night. I still wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes, not because of a nightmare, but because somewhere in the back of my mind, I keep hearing that voice, that small, quiet, terrifying voice saying words no child should ever say. And when I remember what I saw in that basement, I have to remind myself to breathe. I have to remind myself that I made it out, because for a while that night, I truly did not think I would. Let me tell you what happened, and I need you to understand this is not a story I am making up. This is the night that changed me forever. My name is Claire. I am 22 years old, and at the time this happened, I was a junior in college studying early childhood education. I loved kids. That was never in question. I had been babysitting since I was 15, and by the time I was in college, I had built a small but steady reputation in my neighborhood as someone responsible, patient, and good with children. Parents liked me because I was calm. I did not panic easily. I kept the kids fed, entertained, and in bed on time. It was easy money, and honestly, I enjoyed it. I lived in a mid-sized town in Ohio. Nothing exciting ever happened there. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where neighbors still brought casseroles when someone had a baby, where the biggest local news was usually about a high school football game or a new stoplight on Route 9. It was safe, boring even, and I liked it that way. The job came through a neighborhood app, a posting from a woman named Mrs. Harlow. She needed a babysitter for the evening, said she and her husband had a dinner reservation they had been planning for weeks. She had 2 children, ages 6 and 9. The house was on Elm Ridge Drive, which was one of the older, quieter streets on the east side of town. Big houses, tall trees, the kind of neighborhood where everything looked perfect and polished. She offered $40 an hour, which was well above what I usually charged. I said yes within minutes. Looking back, the first strange thing happened before I even walked through the door. I arrived at 6:45 p.m. The sun was just starting to go down, and the light had that golden, late summer softness to it. The house was large and well kept, white shutters, a neatly trimmed lawn, a porch with 2 wooden rocking chairs, perfectly normal. But as I walked up the path, I noticed the neighbor across the street, an older man watering his garden, stop and stare at me. Not a passing glance, a full, unblinking stare. I smiled and gave a small wave. He did not wave back. He just watched me until I reached the front door. I told myself he was just nosy. Some older people are like that. Mrs. Harlow opened the door before I could knock. She was dressed for dinner, hair done, earrings in, but her eyes told a different story. They were tired, not the tired of a busy mom, something deeper than that, like someone who had not truly rested in a long time. She welcomed me in quickly, almost like she was relieved to see me. The house was immaculate, everything in its place. 2 in its place, if I'm being honest. It had the feeling of a home that was being maintained very carefully, not lived in warmly. She introduced the children. The 9-year-old was named Eli. He had dark hair and very still, very watchful eyes. He shook my hand like an adult, which I thought was endearing but slightly unusual. The 6-year-old was named Mara. She had her mother's coloring, light brown hair and pale skin, and she stood slightly behind Eli with her hands clasped in front of her. She did not say hello, she just looked at me, not in a shy way, in an assessing way, like she was deciding something. Mrs. Harlow gave me the usual rundown quickly, almost rushed. Bedtime was 9 o'clock for Mara, 9:30 for Eli. Dinner was already made and in the fridge, just needed to be reheated. No going into the basement because the light was broken and she didn't want anyone falling down the stairs. She would be back by 10. Her husband was already in the car. And then she was gone. Just like that, the door closed and I was alone with the two children. I turned around. They were both standing in the middle of the living room, side by side, watching me. I clapped my hands together the way I always do when I'm trying to break the ice with new kids. I asked them if they were hungry. Eli said yes. Mara said nothing, but she followed when we walked to the kitchen. Dinner was quiet. I tried to make conversation, asked about school, about what games they liked, about whether they had seen any good movies lately. Eli gave short, polite answers. Mara ate her food in complete silence. But every time I looked away from her, I had this prickling feeling on the back of my neck that she was staring at me. Every time I turned back to check, she was looking down at her plate. After dinner, I let them watch television in the living room. A cartoon, something colorful and harmless. Eli sat on the couch. Mara sat on the floor, directly in front of the screen. I sat in the armchair and scrolled through my phone, keeping an ear out. That's when I heard it for the first time. A whisper, very faint, coming from down the hallway. I lowered my phone. The television was still going. The kids hadn't moved. I told myself it was the house settling. Old houses do that. Or maybe sound carrying from outside. I went back to my phone. Then I heard it again. It wasn't the house settling. It had a rhythm to it, the way speech has rhythm, like someone saying the same phrase over and over, too quietly for me to make out the words. I got up and walked down the hallway. There were 3 doors, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, all closed. I stood in the hallway and listened. Silence now. I checked the bathroom, empty. I knocked on what I assumed was Eli's room. No answer. I opened it, empty, neat, nothing strange. I checked the other bedroom, same thing. I walked back to the living room. The cartoon was still playing. Mara was still on the floor. But Eli was gone. I felt a cold drop in my stomach. I called his name, no answer. I checked the kitchen, the bathroom again, both bedrooms again, nothing. And then I heard footsteps above me, slow, deliberate footsteps from the 2nd floor. But Mrs. Harlow had not shown me a 2nd floor. There had been no mention of it. I stood at the bottom of what turned out to be a staircase tucked behind the kitchen, one I had walked right past without noticing because a curtain was hanging in front of it. The footsteps had stopped. I called Eli's name up the stairs. His voice came back from directly behind me. I spun around so fast I knocked into the wall. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, holding a glass of water, looking at me calmly. I asked him where he had been. He said he had gone to get water. I pointed up the stairs and asked him if he had just been up there. He looked at the staircase, then looked back at me. He said very simply that no one is allowed up there. I asked why.
He took a sip of water and said, "That is where she stays." I felt the hair rise on my arms. I asked him who he meant by she. He just looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You will hear her later," and he walked back to the living room. I stood in that kitchen for a full minute before I followed him. By 8 o'clock, the atmosphere in that house had shifted completely. I cannot explain it in a way that fully makes sense. It was like the air had changed, like the comfortable, ordinary weight of a normal evening had been replaced with something heavier and colder. The lights felt dimmer. The sounds from outside had gone completely quiet. No crickets, no cars, nothing. And the children had become very still. I asked Mara if she wanted to play a game before bed. She turned her head toward me slowly, and for the first time since I had arrived, she spoke directly to me. She said, "Do you see her yet?" I asked Mara what she meant. She pointed at the corner of the room behind me. I turned around. The corner was empty, just a lamp and the edge of a bookshelf. I turned back and asked her who she was pointing at. She had already turned back to the television like nothing had happened. I told myself these children were trying to scare me. Kids do that. They test babysitters, try to rattle them, see how they react. I had dealt with it before. I told myself to stay calm, get them to bed, and wait for their parents to come home. But at 8:30, when I went to the kitchen to clean up, I found the basement door open. Mrs. Harlow had specifically told me it was closed. She had been very deliberate about it. I stood at the top of the basement stairs and looked down. It was dark, completely dark. I reached for the light switch on the wall. It clicked, but nothing came on. Broken, just like she said. I could feel cool air coming up from below, colder than the rest of the house, and there was a smell, faint but distinct, like old paper and something underneath it I could not identify. I closed the door and made sure it latched. At 8:50, I took Mara upstairs to bed. Her bedroom was small and neat, with a nightlight plugged into the wall. She got into bed without being asked and pulled the covers up to her chin. I asked if she wanted me to read her a story. She shook her head. I said goodnight and turned toward the door. She said my name. I stopped. I had never told her my name. Her mother had introduced me, but Mara had not been in the room for that. She had come in after, and no one had reintroduced me. I turned around slowly. She was lying with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. I asked her how she knew my name. She said, "She told me." I asked who told her. She said, "The lady upstairs. She knows everything about you, Claire. She has been waiting for someone like you for a very long time." I closed Mara's door and stood in the hallway, and I realized my hands were shaking. I found Eli in the living room still awake, reading a book. I sat across from him and I said very calmly that I needed him to tell me what was going on in this house. He looked up from his book. His expression was not the expression of a 9-year-old. It was too measured, too careful. He told me that she had been in the house since before they moved in. He said his mother knew. He said his mother had made arrangements. I asked what kind of arrangements. He said she had to bring someone. Every few months, she had to bring someone to the house and leave them alone with her. He said that was how it worked. That was the deal. I felt the room tilt. I asked him what happened to the people who were brought here before. He looked back down to his book. He said, "Most of them ran before she got close enough, but some of them did not make it to the door." I stood up. My entire body was cold. I picked up my bag from the couch and I walked to the front door and I grabbed the handle. It did not turn. I pulled harder. It would not move. I checked the lock. The lock was not engaged. The handle simply would not turn, like it was sealed from the outside. I went to the nearest window and tried to open it. Same thing, completely immovable. I grabbed my phone and called Mrs. Harlow. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I tried to dial 911 and got 3 seconds of static before the call dropped. Eli was still sitting on the couch. He was reading his book as if nothing was happening. I asked him how I got out. Without looking up, he said, "You have to go to the basement." I said, "Absolutely not." He said, "It is the only way. The door down there, at the back wall, it opens from the inside, but she will already be down there, and she does not like to be ignored." And that was the moment I heard it from above me, the footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging steps on the 2nd floor, moving toward the staircase. Something in me made a decision before my brain caught up with it. I went to the kitchen. I found the biggest flashlight I could, which was a heavy metal one tucked in a utility drawer. I opened the basement door, I turned on the flashlight, and I went down the stairs. The basement was large and mostly unfinished. Concrete floor, exposed pipes along the ceiling, shelves lined with storage boxes. The flashlight cut through the dark in a narrow beam. I swung it across the room, and in the far left corner I saw the door. Old wood, a simple metal handle. I moved toward it, and then my flashlight beam hit the wall directly beside the door. There were photographs pinned to the wall, dozens of them, all different, all showing different people, men, women, young people, older people. In every photograph, the person was standing somewhere in this house, the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. None of them were posing. None of them looked like they knew the picture was being taken. They were all just standing, looking scared, looking confused, looking exactly the way I felt. Some of the photographs had dates written on the back in red ink. The most recent one was dated 7 months ago. The woman in it was young, maybe 19 or 20. She was standing in the kitchen and she was holding a flashlight just like mine, and she was staring at something off camera with an expression that stopped me cold, because it was the look of someone who understood too late what they had walked into. I grabbed the handle of the back door and pulled it open. It opened into a narrow staircase that led up to a slanted wooden door, the kind that opens outward from the ground, an old cellar exit. I pushed it open and cold night air hit my face, and I came out into the backyard of the house. I ran across the yard and through the side gate and down the street, and I did not stop until I was 4 blocks away, standing under a streetlight with my phone in my hand. The call to 911 went through this time. When the police arrived at the house, they found it just as I described. Eli and Mara were inside, both calm, both unharmed. They could not locate Mrs. Harlow or her husband at any of the restaurants she had listed as their destination. The front door, when officers tested it from the outside, opened perfectly normally. They found the photographs in the basement, all of them. The officer I spoke with told me they were looking into missing persons cases connected to the address. He said it in the careful tone people use when they don't want to say something too directly. I never heard from Mrs. Harlow again. Her number was disconnected within days. The house went quiet. A "for sale" sign went up within a month. The children were placed with other family. I was told that much. But here's the thing I have never been able to explain, the thing that wakes me up at 3 in the morning. A few weeks after that night, I found something in my coat pocket, something I could not account for. It was a photograph, small, slightly worn at the edges. It showed me, standing in that kitchen, holding that flashlight, looking over my shoulder. I was alone in that kitchen all night. No one took that photograph. And on the back, in red ink, was a date. The date was not from that night. It was dated 3 weeks into the future. I still don't know what that means. I still don't know who took it. But every time I look at the photograph, I notice something new in the photograph. A shadow in the background that was not there before. A shape just at the edge of the frame that seems to get slightly closer every time I look at it. I stopped looking at it after the 5th time. Some things you survive, but surviving is not the same as escaping, and whatever was in that house, I'm not entirely sure it let me go. I think it just decided to be patient. And that's the thought that scares me most. Not what I saw that night, but the feeling I have had every single day since then, that something is still waiting.